Imagine a scenario where a state takes immigration law into its own hands. What happens next? Well, to understand that, we need to delve into the concept of state versus federal immigration laws. Traditionally, immigration law has been the domain of the federal government, with the states playing a limited role. The U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, which has been interpreted to give the federal government broad and exclusive power over immigration policy. But what happens when a state decides to step into this sphere, challenging the status quo and asserting its own authority? This isn't a hypothetical question. It's the reality unfolding in Texas, where the governor has signed a bill that allows the state to arrest migrants. Today we dive into a prime example of this state versus federal showdown, the recent bill passed in Texas. To understand the current situation, we need to go back and trace the timeline of immigration laws in Texas. The Lone Star State, sharing the longest border with Mexico among all U.S. states, has a history of complex immigration laws that have been shaped and reshaped over time. Our journey begins in the mid-19th century when Texas, fresh from its annexation to the United States, saw an influx of immigrants from Europe and Mexico drawn by the promise of land. The state had no formal immigration laws at this time, and the growth was often welcomed for its economic benefits. Fast forward to the early 20th century, when the U.S. Congress passed the Immigration Act of 1924, establishing national origin quotas. Although this was a federal law, it significantly impacted Texas, leading to a decrease in legal immigration but an increase in illegal crossings. Over the decades, Texas has grappled with the complexities of immigration. In the 1980s, the state saw a significant increase in illegal immigration, leading to the passage of the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. This federal law offered amnesty to certain groups of undocumented immigrants, but also ramped up border enforcement. As we move into the 21st century, the focus has shifted more towards border security and enforcement. The state has taken measures to reinforce federal immigration laws, with various initiatives aimed at curbing illegal immigration. These initiatives have been met with mixed reactions, sparking debates on the balance between immigration control and human rights. In 2017, Texas passed Senate Bill 4, or SB 4, a state law aimed at cracking down on sanctuary cities, those that limit their cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. The law was met with protests and legal challenges, highlighting the ongoing tensions in the state's approach to immigration. This brings us to the most recent and controversial law, SB 4. SB 4 is a law that has stirred up a lot of debate, both within Texas and across the nation. This new immigration legislation, signed into law by Republican Governor Greg Abbott, represents a significant shift in how immigration matters are handled in the state. At its core, SB 4 gives Texas law enforcement the power to arrest and seek deportation of migrants suspected of crossing the border illegally. It's a bold move that allows the state to take on an active role in immigration enforcement, a responsibility that has traditionally been under federal jurisdiction. The law doesn't stop there. It also authorizes state judges to issue what are effectively deportation orders. However, the specifics of how this provision will be enforced remain unclear, sparking questions and concerns among many. Another significant aspect of SB 4 is that it makes illegal border crossing a state crime. This is in addition to it already being a federal crime. The penalties for this state crime can range from misdemeanors to felonies depending on the circumstances. Moreover, SB 4 includes certain prohibitions on where arrests can occur. Schools and places of worship, for example, are off limits. This provision is seen as an attempt to balance enforcement with respect for certain sensitive locations. Importantly, the law also allows Texas magistrates to order migrants suspected of illegal entry or re-entry to return to Mexico. But again, how these de facto deportation orders will be enforced is still uncertain. SB 4 is set to take effect in March of 2024. However, it's expected to face a slew of lawsuits that could potentially delay its implementation. But as with any law, SB 4 has its supporters and its critics. Like any coin, SB 4 has two sides: those who believe it's necessary and those who think it's punitive. Let's first delve into the supporters' corner. They argue that SB 4 is a necessary deterrent to illegal border crossings. Given the ongoing border crisis, some believe that Texas taking a more active role in immigration enforcement can help alleviate the situation. This group includes political figures, primarily Republicans, who see SB 4 as a bold move against what they perceive as lax immigration policies. Amidst their rallying cries, we can discern a common thread: a call for stronger state-level control over immigration matters. Now let's pivot to the critics. They argue that SB 4 is excessively punitive and could potentially lead to racial profiling. This camp includes Democratic lawmakers, advocacy groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Mexican government. They raise concerns about the law's potential to infringe on individual rights, and the risk of it being misused to target specific racial or ethnic groups. Critics also question the constitutionality of a state involving itself in matters typically under federal jurisdiction, like immigration and border enforcement. They worry that SB 4 might set a precedent for other states to follow suit, leading to a patchwork of immigration laws across the country. And then there's the general public, a diverse group with varied opinions. Some echo the concerns of the critics, fearing racial profiling and potential human rights violations. Others align with the supporters, stressing the need for stronger border controls to protect jobs and public resources. And yet some sit on the fence, unsure of the right path forward amidst these polarized views. Regardless of where one stands, it's crucial to remember that immigration is a complex issue that can't be solved with a one-size-fits-all approach. It requires thoughtful, comprehensive solutions that respect human rights while also addressing legitimate security concerns. Regardless of the differing opinions, one thing is clear: SB 4 is setting up a federal showdown. The stage is set, the actors in place, and the federal showdown is about to begin. The signing of SB 4 by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, which allows the state to arrest and potentially deport migrants, is poised to set off a significant clash with federal authorities. This new law is not just a local Texas issue. It's a bold challenge to federal authority and the established understanding of immigration law enforcement in the United States. Traditionally, immigration and border enforcement have been seen as federal responsibilities. But with SB 4, Texas is stepping into the arena, setting up a potential collision course with the federal government. Legal challenges are almost certain. The American Civil Liberties Union, among other advocacy groups, has already expressed strong opposition to the law. Critics argue that it's needlessly punitive and could lead to racial profiling. They also question the constitutionality of a state law that seems to encroach on federal jurisdiction. But it's not just about the courts. There's also a political battle brewing. The law is seen as a direct challenge to the Biden administration's immigration policies. It's a defiant stance from a Republican-led state, and it's likely to further polarize the already contentious immigration debate. The wider implications are significant. If SB 4 is upheld, it could embolden other states to take similar actions, potentially disrupting the balance of power between states and the federal government. But if it's struck down, it could reaffirm the federal government's authority in immigration matters and deter similar state-level initiatives. Either way, SB 4 is set to shape the future of immigration law in the United States. As we wait to see how this showdown unfolds, one thing is for sure: the debate around immigration laws, both state and federal, is far from over. As we wrap up our discussion on SB 4, it's important to remember that this is just one chapter in the ongoing saga of immigration law. Throughout our conversation, we've journeyed through the timeline of immigration laws in Texas, delved into the specifics of SB 4, and explored the perspectives of its supporters and critics. We've also discussed the potential federal showdown this law might bring about. Looking ahead, it's likely that SB 4 will continue to ignite debate and legal challenges. Its enforcement may hinge on the balance of power between state and federal jurisdictions, a topic that has been contentious throughout American history. There's also the potential for this law to become a touchstone in broader discussions about immigration policy, especially as we approach the 2024 election cycle. Furthermore, the impact of SB 4 on the lives of migrants, as well as on the communities that host them, will be a critical factor in the law's longevity. Any significant negative repercussions could spur changes in the law or its enforcement. While the future of SB 4 is uncertain, it's clear that the conversation around immigration law is far from over. As always, we'll be here to keep you informed every step of the way.